And we are back with more News Talk Saga 960. Mark Petroni with you. So very glad you could join us on this edition of UFO Friday with our friend Dave Scott, whom we're going to bring in a minute. More reports of UFOs. We all saw at least a snippet of the Pentagon reports. They released some videos. We saw some weird dark triangles in the air, some strange orb-like objects. No one seemed to know exactly what they were. It didn't really thrill the insiders in the UFO community who said this was just more of the same, that this wasn't anything earth shattering, but at least it tickled the interest of some members of the public who said we need to find out more. And so our friend Dave Scott is always on hand. We appreciate it. Dave, of course, has a fantastic show on Saga 960, and you can catch it on Saga 960 from 10 p.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. Eastern time. Obviously, adjust those times to wherever in the country you happen to be. But it's spine tingling radio every night, 3 hours worth, man. This guy produces a ton of content. Welcome to the show once again, Dave.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, Mark. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. You can see I got this nice tan. This is the Florida tan that I've been working on since I got here in September. Still in exile from our country, Canada, which apparently has turned millions of people into prisoners who cannot fly. I mean, I don't want to get this into the political realm, but anybody who listens to the show knows my position on this. It's absolutely outrageous. It's criminal what's happened to our country, but it is what it is, and so we continue to push against it. But other than that, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I am doing great. I think I'm just recovering from the big stories last week out of the Pentagon, out of the U.S. Congress, and then out of Ottawa as well, where we seem to be getting a lot of UFO talk and chatter, and governments wanting to know what's going on, elected officials wanting to know what's going on. I always try and stay away from politics on spaced out radio, but when you got political figures now playing the UFO game, there is no choice but to bring them all together, Mark.
Yeah, and some of those are Canadian. All right, you've got an NDPer on board now, talking a little bit about the need to find out more, find out everything we can. I mean, it takes a certain amount of courage, I suppose, to delve into that space, because whenever you do, if you're a politician, you always run the risk of being labeled a kook. Lord knows it's happened in the past, but I think that's less and less so. I think the more people talk about the UFO phenomenon, the less crazy you sound when you're at least asking questions. Tucker Carlson, of course, has done his bit on Fox News, bringing up this subject on a regular basis. We have this story here I'd love to ask you about. Pentagon now reports about 400 UFO encounters. We want to know what's going out there. What's out there? Officials are reasonably sure pyramid-shaped objects in one video were drones. Well, obviously, they're not all going to be UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Top Pentagon officials told a House panel, this was not last Tuesday, but I believe the week before, that there are now close to 400 reports from military personnel of possible encounters with UFOs, a significant increase from the 144 tracked in a major report released last year by the U.S. intelligence community. So what I think this speaks to, and you're the expert, Dave, not me, but does this tell you that more and more people in the military space are feeling free? I mean, I suspect that this has been going on, and we know it's been going on for decades, but the fact that more people are coming out and saying, yeah, something did happen, what does that tell you about the state we're in terms of reporting UAPs, officially?
Well, let's look at it as twofold, because you mentioned a lot there. We'll start off in the United States, where there are reports of over 400 UFO encounters. Look, there are fighter pilots who were reporting as early as 2019 where they were encountering these UAP almost on a daily basis, Mark, and this was training throughout the year. So if you are having multiple fighter pilots on the East Coast of the United States encountering these for almost a full year, that's way more than 400, reports.
Right.
Look, I think that 400 should probably be maybe around 4,000, maybe less, maybe more, but they don't want this to sound like it's out of hand. That is the big thing that they don't want. They don't want it to sound like it's out of hand. They don't want to make it sound like these UAP are literally being able to come and go as they please, and that the United States military, the strongest military in the world, has no control over their own airspace as this is going on. Mark, this is a very scary venture for what we are seeing in the United States because, A, the United States, unlike Canada, is still a very religious country. Okay. They are all about "In God We Trust." God bless America. And for us up here, where Canada has become more agnostic over the years, especially the last couple of decades, we're not as worried about it. But down there is a lot of trials and tribulations going on in Washington, D.C. regarding this subject. You have Representative Congressman Tim Burchett from Arkansas, who is literally coming out and stating that he wants full disclosure. He wants everything known to the public from Roswell on up. But you also have politicians out there who are like, hold on a second here. We need to know what is going on. I mean, if you go back to the congressional hearings a week ago, we still had senators and congresspeople asking if this is possibly swamp gas. We're so 50 years beyond swamp gas, J. Allen Hynek, and the entire Project Blue Book. It was ridiculous that would even come out publicly. Look, they are filming them. We finally were able to get Russia and China out of the conversation. We weren't able to get the word drone out of the conversation. But then going back to the hearings, all of a sudden, there again, we have Russia, we have China, we have other foreign adversaries against the United States, and drones. Look, drones aren't going away. They are going to become more popular. They are going to become more valuable in everything that we do, from delivering pizza to maybe delivering a case of beer to the house. So that way you don't have to leave and potentially drink and drive. But the military has a lot going on with drones. But they've already stated, people like Chris Mellon or David Fravor or Luis Elizondo, they've already stated, man, that it isn't drones from here. And the politicians are playing very coy about this right now, Mark, because they don't feel and they don't want to step on any toes as to whether or not this is of an extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial descent.
There has been some talk, Dave, in the past that there has actually been an exchange of fire between either U.S. crafts, possibly Russian, with UAPs.
Yes.
Do you know anything about that? And I realize we're entering the realm of the speculative, possibly, but there have been reports of that. There have been reports where, and I've heard these, and you can certainly correct me, where there was an attempt to engage with one of these craft, which was seen as a security threat at the time, and the weapon simply didn't fire. Have you heard those stories?
We have heard numerous stories about this over the years. Numerous stories. And this started right around after World War II, after Roswell, during the Korean War, when we finally started getting jets. There is a case over, I believe it's Lake Superior, where a jet fighter was allegedly shot down by a UFO. There's a story out of Vietnam where a B-52 bomber was shot out of the air by a UFO. So this isn't out of the ordinary. We're also hearing reports, courtesy of Jeremy Corbell, that as little as a week and a half ago, there were fighter jets engaging these craft, trying to bring them down. Now, whether or not that report is true or not, or if it's just fiction, it hasn't really come up. Nothing's been confirmed by the Pentagon, but you have to be in direct threat in order to fire a missile in hostility or fire your gun in hostility over American airspace, whether it's a training exercise or not. And apparently, from the rumor that is going around, that this FA-18 Hornet shot at one of these Tic Tacs, if that's what you want to call it, and it just scrambled out of the way like it was nothing. Okay, like, really, you're shooting at me with these primitive weapons? That's the kind of stuff that I don't know if I buy as of yet. It may be happening. It may be happening more than what we know, knowing that American airspace is being infiltrated. And, a situation like that, where you're about to fire on something foreign, that has to go probably straight to maybe even the Joint Chiefs of Staff to make that call as to whether or not you are firing in aggression towards anything. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a flock of seagulls, swamp gas, or a UAP object. So, yes, there are rumors that it is happening, and there are rumors that it is going on, but we have so far been unsuccessful, A, to confirm it, and B, to know whether it's actually happening over American airspace.
Speaking about this individual, Jeremy Corbell, we have part of an interview. Can we listen to part of that? Would you mind? Let's listen, shall we?
We've had open congressional hearings on the subject of UFOs. And not only that, today there was a pressure that was put on our intelligence agencies and our Department of Defense to fess up about what they know. And what they know is that UFOs are real, that they're physical objects, that they are advanced craft, that they outpace, outmaneuver, and outperform any of our war technology. So they showed new footage today, actually. They showed new footage. So that is a symbol or a sign of UFO transparency. We're living in a different world. We're now living in a world, your children are going to grow up, and the UFO mystery, the scientific community is going to look at this. Today showed that the American people want the truth and that our representative government is fighting for us. They're going to bat.
So there was both open testimony, then there was behind the scenes.
All right, so he's saying that was a game changer. I know your opinion has been somewhat less than that, but here's a documentary filmmaker saying, there is movement here. What do you make of that?
Well, Jeremy Corbell is known as a very straight shooter, but he is someone who is also known as an exaggerator of the news. So, I mean, if he found a dime on the sidewalk, he'd be telling you it's the greatest dime that's ever been found in the history of humankind. And I like the guy. I do when I say that. But
has he been on your show?
I've had him on my show. He's very passionate about it. He's very passionate about the subject and his filmmaking. How he's become sort of an insider and a face is he is very good at self promotion. He has successfully hooked up his wagon to George Knapp, the legendary reporter who broke the Bob Lazar story in 1989. He is very much in tune, and apparently he's been able, out of all of this, to get some very strong sources that have released videos to him, and he's become a media darling because he has that look, he has that voice, he knows how to talk in front of the camera, and he's got a fantastic beard, his hair never has a hair out of place, and he is very well versed in the UFO subject. But, I mean, to be excited about the congressional hearings a week ago, I mean, there is reason to be excited. And it got there. The conversation is out. Okay, that the two people, both let me get their names, Bray and Moultrie, they were kind of new to the subject and they weren't as prepared for the congressional hearings as they probably should be for men in that position. And I can tell you this, that they weren't prepared for a number of questions, according to reports I heard from a good friend of mine named Sean Cahill. And Sean Cahill happens to be the right-hand man to Luis Elizondo. But the idea behind it is, there is excitement, but this, we got to stop blowing sunshine up the mainstream butts. You know,
All right.
to
So
talk,
temper your enthusiasm is what you're saying.
to
Dave
use,
Scott. Dave
you know,
Scott joining us on Saga 960. Dave has a fantastic show on Saga 960 from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time, Mondays through Fridays. 3 hours of fantastic radio with terrific guests, including people like Elizondo and Jeremy Corbell. I mean, these you have high-powered people on your show, and I think that's a testament to you and the work that you've done, the hard work you've done building up your show. And I'm going to get you a little later on to plug what you're up to in terms of upcoming guests. But we are talking about the situation in the United States pending and in Canada, because I mentioned at the top of the show that there are a couple of new politicians that have kind of come out and said, wait a minute, we need to look at this subject, including a new Democrat, correct?
yeah. Recently, there has been new Democrat. I believe his name is Matthew Green. He's out of the NDP party, MP out of Ontario. Believes that we need to
You
start.
almost said new Democrat. Did you know that?
Well, close enough. Either way,
I'm going to use that. I think it was an accident on your part, but new Democrat.
you can
like
you
that.
can use that one. All right.
Can I say?
You
Can I use that?
use that one. But the big thing is this: UFOs, UAP. This entire subject is very bipartisan. It's not a concern up here in Canada. It's not an NDP thing. It's not a conservative thing. It's not a liberal thing. And sure as hell, it's not a Green Party thing. But I think once the Green Party hooks up and finds out that their propulsion systems are using zero gravity or something along those lines with no emissions, I'm sure they'll be on the UFO tour right quite quickly. But nonetheless, this is something that has been ignored profusely in Canadian government. Daniel Otis, along with CTV News, has really taken the lead on this subject. And I want to say thank you to Daniel Otis for shouting me out on Twitter, because they were talking about the conversation between Lou Elizondo and MP for Brandon Souris, Larry McGuire, about their conversations back in February of last year, which Luis Elizondo went public on my show a month ago, stating and thanking me for setting up that meeting between members of the Conservative Party and Elizondo, saying it was to quote Elizondo saying, and I hate patting my own back here, but sometimes we have
Go
to,
ahead. Yeah.
saying that it was a lot more significant than what we know, me hooking up that conversation. And I'm still waiting for that what do we know part, Mark, to come out. Because, look, they are happening here. And there is no reason why the Canadian government should be doing this and looking into this on a sparing note. Okay, if the United States military is looking into this with all seriousness, and same as U.S. Congress, our politicians here have to do that. I think the ball is starting to roll. It started as a pebble. I think we're up to a very small rock now. We're not at boulder size just yet, but we're getting there. And the fact that Matthew Green from the NDP, and Lord knows I hate to give the NDP credit for anything, but joining the interest and wanting to know more about Canada's role in ufology right now, I think that's fantastic. The more politicians, the more MPs we get on board, it doesn't matter what MLAs say or they at the provincial level. I mean, that means nothing whatsoever. I mean, Lord knows Doug Ford and John Horgan out here in BC would just learn how to tax the air in order to bring the UFOs in, right? So that's just something that, I tried some humor there, Mark, and you didn't even laugh. You didn't even laugh. My goodness.
I'm sorry.
But
I'm
on a
not at
serious,
the top of my game today, I'm afraid.
but on a serious note, I am looking at this as something where we need to be paying a little bit more attention to this politically here in Canada. We know that it's happening here. We know that there is going to be and this might be a little bit of breaking news for you,
Okay.
visitations by political authorities towards the nuclear facilities, energy facilities in Ontario. And it wouldn't surprise me if those political dignitaries ask those who are running the nuclear facilities about UAPs and what they are
Wow.
doing to report them.
Because we've known that
I
there
can-
has been this is a documented fact that there have been UAPs that have actually shut down nuclear facilities, and they've been spotted over nuclear facilities. It looks like they're draining energy from them. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And they've shut off missiles. We know that. That's testimony
Yes.
straight from people who were directly involved and saw it happen. So this is why they're considered a security risk, a threat now, because they actually have the ability to stop missiles from being launched.
The
And
only reason why we know that they're a threat is because we don't know where they're officially from, what they're about. Deep down in the United States government, they may know. Heck, there may be some woo desk in Canada that may know about this. We don't know. This topic has been buried for so long, and there's so much dirt and gravel over top of it from being buried that we're just sinking the shovel in, Mark. Right?
I have
The
to ask you,
clue.
earlier I asked you about possible engagements between fighter pilots
Yes.
from this world against whatever is out there, these UAPs, UFOs, whatever craft of whatever kind. They are apparently physical craft. We've also heard, of course, of instances like Roswell, alleged cases of crashed UFOs. Have you ever heard anyone say that one of these crafts may have actually been shot down? I'm not saying maybe necessarily Roswell, possibly, but occasionally you hear these are extremely sophisticated craft. They can do maneuvers that we can't do. And so with that level of sophistication and technology, you would figure that they would never crash. And yet you keep hearing of instances in which these craft have allegedly crashed. So I can't help but wonder, what's up with these? I mean, if they're that sophisticated, why are they involved in accidents? And then I can't help but further ask, is it possible that, in fact, the fighter pilots have succeeded in actually shooting some of these craft down?
Well, look, the last potential crash in Canada happened, I believe it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm just Googling it here. Where it happened in 2015, February 29th, 2015, where the military stated that a plane crashed in the Lake Winnipeg area of Jackhead, which was I believe, a First Nations reservation. And social media reports went crazy, stating that it was a UFO and not a plane crash. Well, here's the problem that we have with this report, okay? Because Lieutenant Colonel Paul Davies at the time, from the commanding officer of 38 Territorial Battalion Group, involved in Arctic Response Company groups, said it was a training exercise that they were working out on Lake Winnipeg and just happened to be there when there were witnesses stating that they watched something weird crash. Now, could it be coincidental? Could it be an airplane that crashed? No, it may be. I shouldn't say no, pardon me. It's a maybe. But there were a lot of people who were saying that they saw a bright light in the sky right before this happened. And then they were watching these Canadian Armed Forces vehicles like speeding towards the area on the roads and the highways to get to it, because if it was a crash site, then it would be something that they would respond to ASAP. But no, the Canadian military came out and said, we were doing training in the area. Well, how often does the Canadian military do training that close to First Nations land? And Jackhead is a First Nations town, pretty much. So, I mean, there's all these games that are being played, and they're not going to tell us the truth, Mark. They don't want us to tell us the truth, because if there is a crash retrieval here in Canada, that wreckage is not staying here long. It's immediately get it out of here. Let's get it to the on a one of our C-17 Globemasters, and let's get it down to the United States as quickly as possible. Land it at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The Americans will take it to either deep in underground at Wright-Pat, or they'll fly it out to Area 51, because Lord knows they're not going to let a Canadian aircraft fly into Area 51 like that. So there's a lot of speculation that goes along with it, my friend. A lot of speculation.
Okay. Why doesn't Canada have a UFO? Have an Area 51 or
we do?
I mean, okay,
we do.
Please.
Okay, so in Alberta, okay, I'll bring it up here. Okay, in Alberta, Canada's biggest base is CFB Cold Lake, which is northeast of Edmonton. Now, CFB Cold Lake, if you look at a map, and I'm just trying to bring one up here for you, the area is massive. Okay, you have the base, and then you have the training facility that literally covers, it's almost as big, if not bigger, than Nellis Air Force Range in Nevada, which covers up 2/3 of Nevada. Okay, and back in the 1980s, up at the Air Force Range, that's where the Americans were actually testing their cruise missiles, because they had free flight areas without any public being around. So there you have the military base, and just north of that, all of the sky there is, and all the land there is pretty much non-existent, and training grounds for the CF-18 pilots, and as well as budding fighter pilots to come on in and do their training. There's major training exercises that happen every year called Maple Flag that take place, and that's where countries from all over the world, Canada, the UK, United States, Australia, Germany, Spain, will all come in, and they will participate in these dogfighting events and fighter events along the Cold Lake testing range. And it is believed that there is some secure areas out there where they have taken technology before to try and test it. Now, whether or not due to the NORAD agreement that we're actually able to keep UFOs here, I highly doubt that. The United States wouldn't allow it very much to happen, considering, hey, they allow us to have to spend less than $16 billion a year on defense. You look at our gear that our men and women, our proud men and women, are having to go into battle with. I mean, if it wasn't for their perseverance and their amazing talents as soldiers, we wouldn't, we would be flying paper airplanes and paper boats in the ocean, right?
Dave, I mean, if they crash here, then aren't they isn't it our wreckage? Why should we be beholden to the Americans?
Well, because the Americans have the facilities to test it. We may
They
not
know how to deal with aliens.
At Cold
Alien
Lake.
bodies, they have like experts in processing and doing alien autopsies.
If that's what's going on, yes.
I mean, I can't help but wonder. I mean, is that an area of medical science? Maybe one day, could you go and study alien biology and autopsy?
It's one for the history books, that's for sure. It's one for the history books.
Okay, quickly. I may have asked you, UFO autopsy, alien autopsy, yay or nay? Was it the fake video? Was it the real video? Are you of the belief that it was real?
I am of the belief that that report is fake. That video that we've seen is fake, based on a true story.
Okay, so it was faked video of something that actually happened. Was that Roswell aliens that it was based on?
Yes, the Roswell aliens is what it was based on, and that is something where that video has been debunked a number of times regarding its validity to the subject of extraterrestrial contact. Look, for anybody who wants ET contact, go find it for yourself right now. Listen to shows like mine and really try to pay attention to what's going on, because the United States government, the Canadian government, they are going to make it all once again publicly about the idea that this is of a drone or some Russia, China. You know, they don't want to talk ET yet. Not in front, especially the Canadian politicians. They don't want to talk aliens right now. They're not ready for it.
They got better things to talk about. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Real quick, what do you got coming up on Spaced Out Radio?
Next week is the big one. June 2nd, we will have on Saga 960 Member of Parliament from Brandon Souris, Manitoba, Larry McGuire. We are going to talk to him for 1 hour regarding the UAP phenomena. He's done television interviews for a few minutes on this. He has done news reports, in quotes over the phone, but he has never done a long form interview regarding UAP. We are going to have him. We are the first to have him on Spaced Out Radio and across Canada to have him speak for an hour strictly on UAP. And I am very interested to learn what he knows, what he's learned about the Canadian government. What are we hiding? What does he think about all the reports going to Chris Rutkowski and not members of Parliament? And Rutkowski is just an alleged writer and UFO researcher that gets reports straight from the DOD. We're going to learn a lot in that 1 hour. It's going to go fast, but I highly recommend, Mark, that there is going to be major quotes in that interview for you to use for your audience who doesn't stay up until 10 p.m. Eastern to listen to what he has to say. I'm going to bring it, man, and I'm going to get some answers.
You always bring it, Dave. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you to your audience and to you, Mark.
Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio. Check out his show from 10 p.m. Eastern to 1 a.m. Eastern. Radio that will keep you up at night, that goes bump in the night. All right. And we got to take a quick commercial break. Back with more on News Talk Saga 960 and the Mark Petrona Show after this.